I mean, can you imagine, like, we always think that we are the supreme species and we dictates whatever that happens, and whatever happens in our life is the most important thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, so what do you think of humanity? Like, what do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting what you say
Okay.
because I guess in life, especially in like the millennial generation, we always think about making a difference, right?
Yeah.
Or like, I mean, I used to be like that as well. Like, I used to think that, oh, my existence is to make a difference in the world. And then when you get older, I don't know whether you feel the same, but you realize like, I'm like very, very small, and then you start questioning like your purpose, right?
Yeah.
And I guess, I know I've been pondering about this question a lot. So recently, like I started, not that recently, but like a year ago, I left my corporate job, and I'm now doing like social entrepreneurship work. And when I do my work, I think the one word that I think about a lot when I think about humanity is just like complexity, because I mean I realize that we're just dealing with complex creatures, right? Like we live in a very complex world, even though it's so small. Like
Yeah,
you
it
say,
is.
right?
It
You
is
look
very
at it
small,
from like the space, and you're like tiny. Yeah, but then
yeah.
in that tiny dot, like there are so many people with like complex thoughts, different beliefs, different inclinations, and I guess for me, like the question of humanity is like, how do we solve like problems? And I think, let me go back a little bit, but if you look at the history of humans, like in a way, everything we did from the past until now is to solve things. So for example, like when we invented fire, right? It was because maybe we were thinking of like, how do we
Cook our food, keep ourselves warm.
yeah, questions like that. And then later it's like, oh, there's a light bulb, but how do we expand the use of light in the world? And then how do we mass print, right? And even today, like new technology is the same because you want to solve more problems. And the problems are becoming increasingly more complex, right? Like physically, like climate change, but even like internally, like mental health issues. They're all very complex things. And for me, I think the question that I think about a lot is like, how do we, solve these complex problems without leaving anyone behind?
Do you also think these complex problems that we have is also the residue or the result or byproduct of the original problems that we have? So see problem A, and then we come up with a technology or sort of tool to solve that. And as technology advances and gets more complex, it sort of creates more problems to it. Like, obviously not intended, but sort of a byproduct, say climate change. Which, so the technology of flying per se, right? And now if we're talking about carbon print, so people rather not fly, some rather sail. We've got people like that. So
Oh, Greta, like Greta.
yeah, exactly. So my question is like, you've got problems you want to solve with technology. So is technology the most viable way to sort of solve this complexity?
Very big question. Very complex.
But what just say is true, because like you said like we are problem solvers. I always feel like humans are and explorers. We like to explore stuff.
Yeah.
But when it comes to problem solving, I always feel it's like one problem, you try to solve it, but there's a leakage here, you try to solve that, and then there's a leakage there, you try to solve that. It's like
it's more like damage control.
Damage control, damage control. Like we come up with technology, but then the technology kind of fuck us up also. So what is the biggest problem for humanity? Like, what is the biggest problem? Is it technology?
So I recently read a book. It's called Enlightenment by Steven Pinker.
Okay.
And I mean, it's quite complex book lah. But to put it short, it talks about the concept of entropy. So it's kind of like the nature of humans and the universe is like chaos.
Okay.
Right? I mean, I might totally be misquoting this.
You can misquote
but I
as
guess
much
this
as you
is
want.
how I remember it lah. Okay, this is how I synthesize the
Yeah,
information. Like
we'll put a disclaimer.
like, sorry, Steven Pinker. But basically it's the concept of chaos, right? And in essence, like humans, we are always trying to solve some form of chaos. But you can't completely solve it, which is why, like what you say, you create a technology to solve one problem, and then it creates another problem, right? And I think it kind of, I mean, all of this kind of falls into two camps, and there are some people in the world who believe that we're like progressing a lot. They're like, oh, you know, like we should be more optimistic. You know, the world has progressed since the past.
Yeah.
Like we take for granted things like light, right? I mean, in the past, right, like wow, like people couldn't be productive when the sun went down, but now we can, and we take that for granted. But then other people also feel like, well, you know, you're kind of romanticizing the progress we've arrived at, because it doesn't serve everyone equally, and a lot of people are left behind. And I think I often kind of like wrestle between where I stand or which camp I choose. Like sometimes I'm just like, oh my god, I'm like so depressing, you know. But other times I'm like, wow, like the world's so inspiring, humans are so inspiring. So I don't know, I don't really have an answer, but I think for me, like at the end of the day, I always do choose to think about things like optimist. How can I say that?
Optimistic. Do you want to choose the optimistic camp, like not the pessimistic
yeah,
camp?
because I'm like, what's the point of being pessimistic? Like I'll just feel hopeless and it doesn't inspire me. So I tend to then end up choosing to think about progress and to be hopeful.